Well, joining us from his home in Texas, Tom, we get a lot of guests from Texas. I don't know why, but we have a lot of people from Texas, including our guest, Latroy Hawkins, who comes not only looking fancy as always, but you got this cool backdrop going. Like you're now a Zoom expert. You know how to do the backdrop and everything.
I don't know, but you got to check out my numbers. That's that Blue Jay type of logo.
I know.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that? Is like you were only with the Blue Jays a short time. Was that like a huge impact for you?
I definitely enjoyed my time there. It was one of those situations where, it was my last year. I wanted to go out with a bang, and being traded to Toronto in July of 2015 was just the icing on top for me. And I enjoyed every day I spent in Canada.
You realize you're probably the last Blue Jay to wear number 32. No one will wear that again because of Roy Halladay.
Oh, sorry, brain fart.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. May you rest in peace.
Yeah, and listen, speaking of that, before we go any further, I was going to talk about how exciting it was for you to have your name on the Hall of Fame ballot and have a couple people vote for you. But one of those who was a huge supporter of yours, one of the nicest people I've ever met in the industry, Pedro Gomez, passed away last week. No. And I'm still numb. I know, Tom, you've never had a chance to meet Pedro, but he was just such a terrific human being. I know this is hard. Is there anything that you want to share with what a tremendous human being he was, man?
I mean, we all know, what type of person he was. He kept in contact with everybody, man. He made the world so small. Like, after, Sunday, that tragic day, everything everybody said about him. Well, I just talked to him last week. Or I just talked to him 2 days ago. I talked to him 2 weeks ago. Like, he kept in contact with all his close friends. And, that last message, our last text thread was talking. I just wanted to tell him how much I appreciated him. And, I met Pedro in 2004, my first spring training in Arizona. And he's good friends with Bobby Nightingale, and me and Bobby are close. And, it just formed this relationship. A lot of times players don't have relationships with people in the media, but Bobby and Pedro were my first two friends in the media. And I was walking out of the Super Bowl when I got the call, and I was with my wife, and I just broke down and said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I was like, I got 2 votes, and one of those dudes that voted for me is no longer here with us. And that was just it was so shocking, man. But he was an incredible human being. We were supposed to meet sometime in the next month in spring training because his son's with the Red Sox, and I'm down in Fort Myers with the Twins. But just sending prayers into his wife and his kids, man. That's all we can do, and continue to contribute to his legacy.
It's beautiful you speak about his legacy, and Barry, you're right. I mean, I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but it seems that everything I'm reading about him, it's all about how he connected people and how he accepted people. And when looking at his legacy, do you think there's a path forward, like with journalism being what it is right now, being as divisive? Did he teach us something that we have to learn right now?
Him being his parents coming from Cuba, how they got here, how hard he worked. We can learn a lot from that. Hard work pays off, man. He worked. His knowledge of the game was just so advanced, and the stances that he took. I was reading last night that he wrote that article about Schilling, back in the day when nobody else would stand up and say anything and everybody knew how he was. And Pedro stood up to it, and I think I read where somebody asked him, why did he write that article? And he said something along the lines that, you can live with yourself when you're telling the truth. When you're writing the truth is what the truth is. And that right there, that talks about his character and his integrity. And he was very good at his job, very good. And a lot of kids down in Miami and across the country and across the world can look at his story and say, you know what, I can become, a Pedro Gomez.
You mentioned the word integrity, and Pedro could have very easily just told people, yeah, I voted for Latroy because Latroy's a great guy. I know him. He's a friend. But he didn't, because he has integrity, and he had reasons. He had reasons, baseball reasons, why he posted his vote for you. Did he make that clear? Did you ever have a chance to talk to him and say, Pedro, why me? Why'd you vote for me?
Yeah. Yeah, we had that conversation. He called me when the ballot came out. We talked about it, and he told me, I'm going to vote for you. Not enough guys with your, with what you've done in the game, get recognition for what you did, what you accomplished, what you brought to the game. And he always talked about number. His biggest thing was, one sec, let me check it out, Barry, one sec, so I don't get it wrong. He talked about check rule number 5, integrity, sportsmanship, and character. That's what he said. Integrity, sportsmanship, and character. And that's number 5 on the list. And he sent it to me. And
wow.
We think about that. And I just think about the last text message I sent him. And he had this thing. I've been in baseball a long time. He was in baseball a long time also, but I think maybe 2 or 3, the year his son got drafted, he called me. He was excited. And then the next spring training, his son got a chance to go over to the big league side to pitch in the game. He's like, Troy, my son's going over to pitch in the big. He's wall jumping. What are you talking about, PG? He's wall jumping. He's jumping the wall. I'm like, what does that mean? He was like, you mean you've been in the game all this time, Troy? You don't know what that is? I've never heard that. I've heard a lot of things. He's coming from the minor league side, going to the big league side. So every time we talk about wall jumping. It was just a thing. He thought it was so funny. It was more funny to him that I didn't know what it was than it was to me. Like, he's wall jumping. I'm like, okay, cool. So he was talking about Dante getting a chance to go over and pitch in some big league games again and all that stuff. So may you rest in peace. Tragic. It was tragic. That was tragic, man. And we lost Therese Palvin from Kansas City, from Yahoo Sports, who covered the Kansas City Chiefs. He Tuesday unexpected at 36, 37 years old. Spoke to him a lot, and he was locked in on Patrick. And I got the chance to know him since 2017, and just getting the news that he had passed away also it's been a tough week, man, a very tough week.
Well, it's been a tough year, and Tom and I have spoken about this a lot. And COVID has been such a killer, but it's not just the people that are getting COVID and getting sick from COVID. It's everything around COVID. I don't know the circumstances behind, what happened with Pedro or what happened with that, the other writer you were speaking of, but so many of us are struggling with our mental health. So many of us are struggling financially. I mean, man, you and I, we're not young spring chickens, Latroy. We've been around this world a long time. I'm 53. I never seen anything comparable to what this world is going through right now. And we're talking COVID. We're talking the issues with racism that are still going on, the issues with homophobia that are going on, the hate that is going on in the world. There's just so much of this stuff. And I mean, I've seen things, but it just seems to have it all at one time. It's been hard to stay positive in the world right now.
Yeah, and you said it right, Barry. It is definitely hard to stay positive, but all those things you mentioned have been around a very long time, except for COVID. Racism, the hate, inequality, systematic racism, that stuff has been on forever. And I think now, when back in the summer, when I was talking to employees with the Twins, we talk about how that it has been around a long time, but we're starting to move the needle in the right direction because people that look like you are tired of it also. It was okay when people of color were, tired of it and, protesting and not getting anywhere. But when people started to look like the people that's doing the oppression get tired, that's when the needle starts to move in the right direction. And I like to say, like, my daughter's 19, and that generation, you saw a lot of those young men and women out there of all colors, from all backgrounds of life, you know, protesting, you know, how we've been treated, how people have been treated, you know, throughout history. And to say that, that means a lot, because our generation probably won't get it done. But which is one thing we know, we can say what we want about the generation, my daughter's generation, but, you know, well, they play video games, they're this, they're that, they're superficial. No. But they're tough when it comes to standing up for what they believe in. They're a lot tougher than the generations that came before them.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Obviously, you know, the journey that my kids are going through is going to be vastly different than the journey that your children would be going through. But, you know, I have an autistic son, and talking about this younger generation as their ability to just accept people for who they are and to not worry about those unimportant things like race, like sexual preference, like, you know, and that does, you know, give me hope. And I love hearing you saying that through COVID, you know, that we are moving the needle in the right direction. Is there anything in particular that you've been doing, because you've been an advocate for social change, social justice for so long? What have you been spending your time on during COVID?
You know, that's a tough question, because when it first started, I was in Arizona, then I came home, and, you know, I was worried about my daughter. She stayed in California after they had to leave school, and she was locked in on the protesting and the marching, and she was locked in on it. 18, 19 at the time. Well, she's still 19, wasn't that long ago. She was so locked in, and when it happened, a lot of that stuff, you know, our organization, the Twins, Minnesota Twins organization, we did a phenomenal job, and, you know, and getting right out in the forefront with our employees and letting them know that, you know, our organizations care about stuff like this, and we're going to do all we can to help continue to move that needle. So I've been doing a lot in our organization, just with diversity, inclusion, and just, you know, even with our team, just being a person that can listen, a person that, you know, my buddies, my friends, that they can come talk to, especially my friends of, you know, that are Caucasian. They can come and talk to him, ask me questions, and try to get a better understanding. So for me, I think I've been a good sounding board and giving out some really good information, be with my friends that actually trust that, you know, I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And so that's what I've been doing, just doing a lot of educating on issues in our country that a lot of people don't have to deal with. And, you know, my culture has to deal with it. But my biggest issue is with people when they say, well, America gave you all this. You have this, you have that, you have money, you have this. And I have to remind people, I'm one person in my family. I'm one person in my family. My brother just got out of jail doing 24 and a half years. 24 and a half years.
Wow.
24 and a half years. And think about, I always tell people, everybody's plight in the United States isn't the same. It's not. My brother was part of the mass incarceration of African-American men in the mid-90s. Little BS charges trumped up and throwing a book at Black men. And they wonder why there's an issue with Black men not being in the homes, helping raising the kids, because you locked them all, most of them away. Well, how did you get out of it? I was lucky. Everybody doesn't get lucky. I can't say I was the greatest kid. I did a whole lot of things. That I could have easily went the other way. Well, your daughter did. I said, the thing is, you don't understand. People who are in a position to speak up, they speak up. And a lot of times it's not to benefit themselves. It's to benefit the people who can't, who have been speaking and hadn't been heard. So once again, it's for the people that don't have a voice. And there are millions and millions of people of all races in the United States that feel like they don't have a voice, and around the world. You just don't have to be Black. There are plenty of people in this world that don't have a voice. And when you have a platform, you should use it. If you're not helping others or making an impact on, you know, on other people's lives, you're wasting your time on earth. Who said that? Roberto Clemente.
Mm-hmm.
Like Roberto or Jackie, one of my favorites. One of them said it. So you're wasting your time. You have to make an impact on people. And if that's helping them, you know, understanding their struggles and helping voice their opinions and let them be heard, or using you as a vessel to be heard, then I think we all got a responsibility to do that.
You know, latroy, a lot of the racism that's out there is based on hatred, but there's also a lot of it based on ignorance. And this is Black History Month. And to me, Black History Month is not something for African Americans to focus on. It's for the world to focus on. And I know school in Canada is different than school in the United States, but we learned a lot about world history. We learned a lot about the world wars. But we learned nothing about Black history. And I think if we can start educating everybody, not just African Americans, to be aware of Black History Month, but all of us to learn about Black history, those that are making decisions on ignorance might have a little more substance to base their thoughts on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's such a slippery slope, man, because I try to explain it. Another way I try to explain it, I say, like, people in America and not African Americans, 47 generation head start on everything in this country. Think about that. 47 generation head start. Somebody said to me the other day, 47 generation, and they was like, that's 47 lifetimes. I'm like, yeah, that's the head start they've had on African Americans in this country. Excuse me, guys. And people don't understand, like, that's, you're talking about the old saying of being behind the eight ball. Sure, you're not even on the table.
Mm.
And for you to think that people of color can make up that ground in 50 years, it hadn't been that long since we've been able to vote.
That's shocking.
My grandfather passed away May the 8th last year. He was 94 years old. He came to the Midwest from Mississippi when he was 16 years old. When he was 15, he enlisted in the military when he was 16 years old. He changed his birth certificate so he can get out of the South and somewhere where he doesn't have to be that nigger boy, as he was called when he was in Mississippi. He did 4 years in the military. He got out. They lost every record of his platoon ever even serving their country. Only his platoon, all Black platoon. Then he had to go back another 2 years just to be able to get so he can get benefits.
Wow.
Go back. So he spent 6 years, but the first 4 years, it didn't even count. And he come back to the United States, couldn't get a loan to get a house, couldn't get anything, being spit on, all those stories. So when people say you're not patriotic, remember, the national anthem means a lot to certain people. It means absolutely nothing to others, because those words that we hang on to so tightly don't apply to everybody. And that's the part that people don't understand. The land of the free, the brave, and that is, yes, we're not walking around in slavery no more. We're not getting whipped with chains. We're getting shot in the streets, systematic racism, horseshit education in the inner city, red line, where all the Black people get the worst land, can't get loans. It's still there. People have to understand, like, just because it's not in a barbaric manner doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the taking away of that barbarism, of the direct violence, though, does it seem as if it's made it actually a much more difficult and insidious problem to fight, because it's gone from being in your face and something that was right there, and it's easy to point at a violent injustice, but that systematic, that redrawing of maps. I always remember visiting the States and driving through cities like, St. Louis was the one in particular where I saw all these streets and houses off the highway, but on my map they weren't there. And we don't have anything like that in Canada, where they're, the lower income neighborhoods, they're taking off the Pearlie's maps in the US in some areas. And so when it becomes covert like that, is it harder to fight? Is it a longer fight? And yeah, that's
I think it's a longer fight because you have people in charge who have been in charge for a very long time, and they inherited that job from somebody that was there a very long time with the same mentality or keep people segregated. But the funny thing is, like, you know, like my grandfather was, I can't say he was so traumatized, but he was so um he had this thing about him that he didn't want to be around white people because they had treated him so bad when he was younger, and they treated him so bad when he was in the military. Like he didn't want to be. He was fine being around his people, and I talked to him years and years about that, and he always said, "Son, you have no clue what I've been through." And I said, "Well, everybody's not the same." He said, "You're right, but I ain't got time to be picking through who the good and who the bad." He would tell me that. I'm like, well, I mean, I can't debate your feelings, Granddad, because you went through something that I never had to go through. So, but he wasn't bitter about it. He just didn't want to deal with it. He just felt like I'm just going to stay in my area, my little room, my little spot in my little house in Gary, Indiana, and I'm not going to worry about all that other stuff. He did not worry about, nope, he didn't want to leave. You know, coming to visit was a problem. He was like, no, because you just never know. You don't understand what we went through growing up in Mississippi and what I went through in the military and what I went through early in my life, that I had to navigate things in a whole different manner than you have to navigate right now. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you walk around like you don't have a care in the world. We couldn't walk around like that. I said, well, that shows that the changes happen. He said, yeah, son, but you never forget. You never forget. As much as you try, you will never forget how you were treated.
Is that kind of, do you get that feeling whenever you'd walk into a clubhouse or whenever you'd step on a field? You would think about Jackie Robinson, you would think about Hank Aaron, you'd think about the players that really made that possible for you to be able to step on a field, walk in a clubhouse and not be judged because of the color of your skin. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but when you compare it to what Jackie had to go through and even what Hank had to go through, guys like that, just made it that much more feasible for you and other African-American players to be able to be accepted in clubhouses and fields.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby. A lot of people forget about Larry Doby, but he was the first African-American to play in the American League. And you know what they did? They paved the way, what Jackie went through he set the bar. And, my generation think we could have went through that? Heck, heavens no. We're raised completely different in different times. But, for me, I was a black pitcher only black pitcher a lot of times. And I just never, like when people say, well, how was your experience in baseball and this with racism? And I in the minor leagues, I remember being called an N-word one time in Fort Myers, Florida. And I was in the car with my buddy, Matt Lawton, and he said, and before I could think about it, man, I had spat at the girl. She was driving in the car and I couldn't get to her, but I just felt like I needed to spit. I mean, I couldn't, she was fast. He was like, what's wrong with you, man? You ain't never been called an N-word before? He's from Mississippi and I'm from Indiana, right outside Chicago. So it's a big difference. Yeah. So I'm like, no, I hadn't. And that really resonated with me. And then once I got to Chicago with the Cubs, after I left Minnesota, that's when I saw the true racism in our country. Being in Minnesota, never experienced it. When I got to Chicago and Dusty Baker was my manager, and some of the things that people wrote us, I'll never forget sitting in my locker, opening up a piece of mail, and it just called me every word but the name my mother named me, latroy Hawkins. And Dusty was like, come here, man. He was like, come in my office. And I went in his office and he had this big old box. He got just a box. It didn't even look like it belonged. It was like a box like from Amazon or something. It didn't belong in his office. It was full of hate mail.
Oh my God.
Full of hate mail. And I'm like, well, I'll be damned, Dusty. He was like, man, I'm from California. I've been all over this world and all over this country. He's like, that shit don't bother me. Those people, they're writing it on a piece of paper for a reason. That's how they feel. Can we change them? Probably. Will we change them? Probably not. He said, don't let that affect you. And I remember I kept that letter. I kept that letter until I retired. Then I finally got rid of it. But just the hatred that I felt reading that letter. And after that, the Cubs opened my mail for me. They wouldn't let me open my own mail because of the hate mail that was coming in. And all over a baseball game. How about that? Over a baseball game? But you know what? It made me stronger. It made me appreciate where I was mentally, because a younger latroy Hawkins probably would have, it'd have been different. But, and I tell you, I had some great teammates at the time. I had Kerry Woods, Farnsworth, Kyle Farnsworth, Mark Pryor, Gruzelanek, and I let all those guys read what those people were sending me, because it's one thing to have an effect on me because that's what it was mailed to. But when you start letting your friends of different races read that stuff and how it impacts them, yeah, I'll never forget that. It was wild, man. It was wild. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, this is how people really feel. And I tell you, it did hurt. You know what hurt? I grew up 30 miles from Chicago. 30 miles from Chicago. In a completely different world. Had no clue it was like that. And every letter came from somewhere in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah, every letter came from somewhere in Chicago. I grew up 30.
Wow. Talking about, just combating that sort of hate. And, you use words like anger, and you talk about spitting, but you got 2 Hall of Fame votes for a reason, and that reason was the positive impact that you made on the communities, on your teammates, on the game in general. So was there a switch for you where combated with all that hate, you went, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna make the world a little bit better? Like, did it force you to becoming the advocate that you were?
No, I already had that in me, Tom. My grandmother, my mom's mom, Leslie Lee Cannon, she grew up in Mississippi, same place my grandfather was from, and she had seen a lot growing up, and she was completely opposite of my grandfather. She was outgoing. She didn't care what color you were. I mean, I'll never forget, man, this story. And I tell it, and I always I said I was going to start a foundation called Grandma's Refrigerator, because I was home visiting in 1999. And I came in the kitchen, and my grandmother was in the kitchen, and she was cooking, and she was sitting with her back to the door and her back to the refrigerator. And I'm sitting in front of her, and we talking, having fun. And I see this little white kid come in the back door, didn't knock, go in the refrigerator, get something, go back out, didn't say hi, bye, hey, Miss Cannon, and back out. And I'm looking with this perplexed look on my face, bro. I'm like, Indiana, it's a predominantly Black city. And my grandmother didn't even bat an eye. She was just like, remember this, young man. I don't care how big you get. Everybody needs help every now and then. And then she wanted to tell me that their gas and light was off. Their house was across the alley, which was like about 30 yards away. And, they were running a extension cord to the house, but their refrigerator was broke, so they had to use the refrigerator. And she's like, don't you ever forget, I don't care how big you get. At some point, everybody needs some help. And don't be the one not to give them help. And I'm like, okay, Grandma. Okay, so what's the little boy name? I got that very early, Tom. I got that early, and I always just wanted to make an impact. Even with my teammates, like I didn't care where you were from. I knew I grew up different from a whole lot of people, and I wanted to know how you grew up. I wanted to get to know my teammates and get to know people, not just on a surface level. I wanted to get, I wanted some substance. So from our conversations, I wanted to get to know my teammates. And I think that's why I was well respected, because I didn't treat anybody differently. I treated everybody with the same respect. And that's all I asked in return. Treat me with respect, and I'm going to treat you with respect. And it's all about how you carry yourself. You can't be asking for respect if you're out there doing dumb things,
Right.
So I had to, practiced what I preached, and guys saw that, and I got that mutual respect from Latin guys, black guys, white guys. I don't care who you were. I got that respect, and I gave that type of respect. But I got to know my teammates too. I didn't just go out to dinner with the guys that look like me, man. That's so boring. That is so boring. I went to dinner with everybody. Yeah, I've been the only guy at the table that didn't speak Spanish. So what? I went because I wanted to know their culture. I want to know where they were from. I've always had Latin roommates coming through the minor leagues. And I did that because I saw how unfair they were treated. I mean, when they're getting treated worse than they treat, black guys or people of color were treated, I thought that was a problem. So I was always their voice. And I always tried to protect them from certain situations. And it was just something I naturally did. Because when I saw it, I recognized it. I'm like, okay, let me try to, combat this in the right way.
Latroy, when you get traded to a new team like you did with the Blue Jays, you get into that clubhouse for the first time, and I'm sure that there were a lot of players that you knew. I mean, you obviously knew Troy Tulowitzki quite well. However, there are probably a lot of guys in that clubhouse that you knew of, or you may have known of their reputations. But did you go in there and say, well, before I say, well, I hear this guy's an a-hole, I want to get to know him and find out for myself? Like, did you do a lot of observing the first week or so in that clubhouse to try to get to know who these people really were, as opposed to what you may have heard about them?
Yeah, Barry, it's one thing, like that was my last year. That was year season 21.
Yeah.
Nothing anybody can tell me about somebody that I'm going to believe. Now, 10 people tell me the same thing. That's different. But I like to get in there and get to know my teammates myself. Get to understand them, why they think the way they think, what makes them tick. I went in, I didn't know Batista. I didn't know Encarnacion, but I had played against those guys, and we always had a mutual respect, even though we probably never spoke on the field, but there still was a mutual, athlete respect, always. We had, we designated him for assignment from Miami, played with the Twins. We traded him to Oakland that year.
No, Danny Valencia.
Valencia. Yes, Valencia.
Now he's a guy that is very misunderstood, or maybe because we've had a lot of players on this show, and some of them have actually on the record said, not a big fan of the guy. And then others say,
character.
Right, he's different. He's not for everybody. He's not everybody's cup of tea, as they say. Right?
Oh, yeah. And that's understandable. Like, people understand, like, everybody's not going to like you. And that's fine. That's fine, because sometimes people have their own hangups. But yeah, Danny Valencia, I heard a lot of things about Danny, but it's one of those things, like how he treated me. We had that, and I didn't come off as a guy that, I was taking bullshit. I was like, no, I got way too much substance to allow you to give me BS. So then Danny was fine. We were fine. I knew a lot of people that knew Danny, and some had good things to say about him. Some had bad things to say about him. But at the end of the day, I had to get to know him myself. And the only thing is, he wasn't there long enough, but I saw some stuff. He was loud. He loved to talk trash, which is fine with me, because I think every team needs a guy like that, because he's going to push a lot of buttons.
Latroy, you kind of took Roberto Osuna under your wing for a while. And there was a guy that, again, we don't know all the facts, but we know what's been reported. How hurt were you to see that happen? Because I, like you, probably saw that there was a decent kid inside there too. And when I heard what happened, I was really, really shocked and really disappointed, because that wasn't the kid that I got to know.
Yeah, you're right, Roberto. They sat Roberto and I next to each other.
Yeah.
When I got to Toronto, and he was the youngest kid in the league, and I was the oldest guy in the league. So that was a story in itself. Man, I was disappointed to hear it. I also actually had a chance to speak to him about it. My wife and I do a lot of work with domestic violence survivors, and then they're not all women. There's some men involved in that also that are, survivors of domestic violence. It's tough, man. I'm a prime believer you you can't completely judge somebody by one moment in their life. I know people are going to be like, well, what do you mean he hit a woman? He did this happened, this happened. It's just a tough subject because, you can have a moment and one moment can ruin your life. And that happens all the time. And
we also don't know all the facts, right? I mean,
right.
We only
You don't
know
know all the
what's been
facts.
reported.
You don't know all the facts, but what was that? That happened in 2018, right?
Yeah.
2018, you don't need to know all the facts anymore. You're guilty until you're proven innocent. There's no other way around where you're innocent until proven guilty. No, you're guilty out the gate. You're guilty. So you don't get that benefit of the doubt that of the law. You don't get that. And him and I talked about it. He's very remorseful for what happened. Whatever happened, he's very remorseful because it definitely brought up a negative light on him, his last name, the organization in the city of Toronto, and that young lady's family. Do I think somebody can come back from that? Yes. I mean, what he's doing now, and what he's done since that point, since that night, I think says a lot about your character. You're getting the help that you need. You're doing things to having a positive impact on the city that you're in, wherever you're from. He's doing the right things to help himself become a better person.
When we see the sort of the rabid cancel culture that's out there right now, where that you hit the nail on the head. One thing, one moment, with the Osuna instance, we don't know if anybody was hit, right? We know that there was a complaint, but because of Canadian justice, we don't know any of the specifics. But the cancel culture that is going on with incidents like this, does it make it harder for advocacy? When you just remove, once someone makes a mistake, that's it, and they're done, they're canceled. Do we then get to a point where people are just afraid to live their lives because of that 1 foot out of bounds or saying that?
None of us are perfect, right? Nobody on this earth is living a perfect life, except up there, right?
But I think is social media, the internet was like the greatest thing that happened to mankind.
It allows this to happen.
The worst thing that's ever happened to mankind.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, man. So, that cancel culture, I mean, I don't know, man. I just think too many people have an opinion. I think that, but on the flip side of that, I think everybody should have an opinion. Everybody should have a voice. But when there's nothing a person can do to right their wrong, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. When there's no coming back from something that you did, especially when it's something minor, or you misspoke or something like that, you can't come back from that. That's not, I don't think that's what cancel culture had envisioned when it happened. You just, we completely just take this person's ability to earn an income completely off the map. That's not, I don't, and I think even with people who say stupid stuff racist stuff and all that, bigots and the homophobic stuff, I just think there is a road to redemption. And I think people need to understand that there is a road to redemption. That's what do you do after that? What do you do after that? Where are you going? Are you going to stay the same, or are you going to make yourself better? And you're going to try to understand the other side. And then how are you going to make, what adjustments are you going to make in your life so you don't do that again? And how are you going to impact other people in a positive manner? Yeah.
Well, thank God the majority of Americans got it right on that last vote. And hopefully we can start to move forward to a happier world that we're living in. And we've talked serious for quite a while, latroy. I want to try to lighten the mood a bit. And we have invited 3 lucky fans of yours to join us here in the Zoom. And lo and behold, they're all wonderful women. I don't know what it is, latroy. You attract the women to our show, but we're going to bring in Fiona, Jody, and Susan into the conversation. and we're going to allow them to ask questions. This is, you know what, latroy, you can't do this anywhere else in social media. No one else is doing. No one else is allowing their fans to come on the show. So this is our little thing that we like to do. So we are slowly getting everybody. This is my technology, my old man slow technology thing. So we'll have right now. Jody's there. So Jody, say, I like your sweatshirt. It's very similar to
Jody.
mine. There's Susan.
Hi, Susan.
And momentarily we will have Fiona up here as well.
Fiona has to be very young.
No, of course,
Really?
she's like
Fiona?
18.
I'm just going by the name. By the name.
Fiona, you're
she looks
18,
like she's
right?
creeping in about 20,
Oh,
right?
Yeah, definitely 18. Yeah.
There you go. So, this is awesome. We get to have, one of our things to invite some of our lucky listeners to come in. And these are our Out of the Park insiders. And they've all been listening. They've all been watching. And we're going to open up the floor. If any of you have questions, we'll kind of go in order. Jody, you're there beside latroy in the screen. So is there anything you'd like to say and ask latroy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say, sticking with the serious side, actually listening to you this morning brought tears to my eyes. The story you're telling about the hate mail that came to you in the clubhouse, and then taking it into Dusty's office and him showing you that box, it chokes me up again. It is an unfortunate thing that any of us have to live in a world where somebody has a box to put all their nasty things into. So listening to you speak about how you give everyone a chance and you don't judge, maybe 10 people's opinions might change your opinion, but one doesn't. And I wish that more of us could do that because it would just be a better place.
Yeah, that's true, Jody. It definitely would be a better place. But, you're getting choked up. You know why you're getting choked up? Because you care.
Because I care.
Because you care. And not enough people care. That's the thing. Not enough people care.
Amen.
Fiona, Susan, either one of you would like to ask? And Jody, if you have a question, we can bring it back in too.
For sure.
But Fiona or Susan, do either of you guys have a question you want to ask latroy?
Okay, latroy. Thank you for doing this. I was very touched by all your stories as well. And yeah, I got a bit emotional too listening to you, but trying to lighten it up a bit. A couple of things. What was your favorite thing to do while you were playing in Toronto? Was it favorite restaurant or going for a walk by the lake or going to shows? And the other thing, I read somewhere about you had a fan club that followed you around, and that was really interesting to read about. And I'm sure that was a happy time in your life. Maybe could you enlighten us a bit about that?
Okay, so we'll go. Hi, Susan. How you doing? We'll talk about the fan club first. So
Okay.
I was talking to some of my fan club members yesterday.
Oh, good.
And Larry Campbell, and it'll be the first time they hadn't come to see me in spring training in 20 years.
Wow.
Pandemic. So they followed me everywhere, every year, wherever latroy was. There was a representative of latroy Hawkins fan club, and that fan club started in 2001. It was a rainy night, one night after the game at the Metrodome in Minneapolis, and all the players came out. Nobody was signed, and I stopped and signed in the rain.
Yeah.
So it came this situation where I would stop and sign every night for that same group, and Eric England, the fan club president, he decided to start the LHFC, latroy Hawkins Fan Club, and it grew to like 900 people across the country. And they would stand up in the seventh inning, and they had a banner, the latroy Hawkins Fan Club. They would wave the banner every night during the seventh inning stretch. And it was a core group of probably about 50 that, we had a picnic every year. The 3 years after that, I stayed in Minnesota. And then, early on, it was like 20 to 30 that would come to spring training. And then over the years, it's phased out just a little bit. But Larry and Linda Campbell, they've come to every spring training since until this year. They can't come. But it's a great time. I mean, they were just fan club members and they became family. crazy story. One of the kids in the fan club, Eric Weber, when he was a junior in college, I let him drive my car to the prom.
Right.
His
I read
girlfriend,
about
yeah, and
it. It's so wonderful.
yeah, right. And they got married. They just had their 10-year wedding anniversary, and one of the best men in their wedding. Well, I was a groomsman, but the best man got sick, so I had to stand. I had to do the speech at reception. Eric and I are business partners now.
Wow.
Minneapolis. I was just there 2 weeks ago, and I stayed at his house with him and Hannah and the kiddos. So they were just fan club members, and now they become family over the years, and it's been a crazy ride. Just when people hear that story, they just shake their head. And a lot of people in the fan club, they never had that connection with another player since then. And I guess I made it. I made it so easy for them. But when I was in Toronto, Susan, it was tough to go anywhere because we were winning, and it was a lot of people downtown, and it was overwhelming. It was fun, but we didn't go many places because we played almost every day. We didn't have to get food. We had food at the ballpark, lunch and dinner after the game. So we really didn't get a chance to get a specific place or favorite place I would like to eat at. I did like the pizza. What's the name of the pizza place? It's right by the stadium.
Pizziola?
What is it?
Pizziola? Or is it?
No.
Susan, you live right near the stadium?
I can't remember. I'm getting old.
It's one of those pizza places. I did like the pizza, but I didn't get a chance to go out much. Like after the games, it was so many people every night that we had. I live right across the street on First Street, right upstairs from the Starbucks. So I would get out the stadium and I would hurry up and get home because it was so overwhelming every night after the game. People didn't go home. It was, and they knew who we were. So walking to my, house, my apartment, it was fun, but it was rough, but it was fun.
It's funny because I parked underneath the dome. So by the time I'd be finished my work and I'd be pulling out, and I was driving like a Honda Accord, nice car. And as I'd be coming up the ramp, I'd see all the fans there, and they'd be like, and then I'd roll down my window, and they'd be like,
So we would walk on that
Barry.
Going out of that side. I didn't go out that side, Barry. I came out of the side where the I forgot my
Front Street, more that side of it.
Yeah, and I would go down those stairs, but we would have to go through the kitchen of the hotel that's connected to the stadium. And fans knew that we were coming out that way. So and then they'd be waiting on the platform waiting for us. So it was tough trying to get home at night, but it was fun. It was never a problem. But then we got those scooters.
Oh yeah.
We would go out different doors. I
used to see Reyes riding his right along, outside the dome, because his apartment was right across the street, and he'd just be riding it along. It was pretty funny. And I want to get into that in a bit too, because of David Price and what a wonderful teammate he was. But I know, Fiona, you've been waiting patiently. Would you like to ask a question to Latroy?
Yeah, I would. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you for your honesty, and you spoke very intelligently and eloquently this morning, and it was nice to hear. Just wondering, when you were having that dream of being an MLB player, was there any team you really dreamed of playing for, and did you get to play for them?
Good question, Fiona. How are you doing today? Good?
I'm good, yeah.
Good. I had no dreams of playing in Major League Baseball. I'm serious. I was a basketball player coming up, so I had dreams of playing in the NBA.
So why didn't you?
When I got drafted out of high school to play baseball, and I'm like, I can go to college and play basketball, or go play baseball and make money. I was making money in college, and my grandfather told me that I was a better baseball player than basketball player, and I told him he was crazy. And lo and behold, he ended up being right. I didn't have a love for the game. I think when I completely understood that I had an opportunity to to be good at pitching. I never had a pitching coach until I got drafted and signed in 1991. So when I got to Fort Myers, Florida to rookie ball, I was so behind everybody else. I was way behind. I was just this, this kid who could catch and had a good arm, and I didn't know anything. And it took me about a year and a half to even get up to speed because I had never seen anybody play baseball like that. I mean, we had a shortstop and he was just okay. And I thought he should have been in the big leagues already. But I never had that dream of playing in the big leagues until probably 1994. I think that's when I was like, you know what? That's when I started to get it. I started to get a breaking ball and things started to click. I had a couple of coaches that invested a lot of time and, okay, this is what we're going to try and you should be able to do this. But before then, I didn't have any dream of playing in the major leagues. Nope, it was all about that $745 I was making every month.
All right, here's a little trivia question. One of your former teammates in Toronto now is retired and plays in a men's pickup basketball league and has a hoops game that he plays at least a couple times a week. Any guesses who that would be? Because you'll be shocked. I can tell by the look on your face.
Russell Martin? No.
No. R.A. Dickey.
R.A. Dickey. Really?
We had R.A. on the show about a year ago, and we asked him because, he's such a competitive guy. And we asked him, what are you doing to fill that competitive void in your life? Because that's a hard thing when you retire from the game, right? I mean, you spend your whole life at such a high competitive level and all of a sudden you don't have it. And he said he had to join a men's basketball league because he wanted to compete. He wanted to be able to show that he can still do it, right? Now, I imagine his free throws had no spin on them, but yeah, kind of amazing when you think about it though. But as someone who played at such a high level, how did you fill that void?
Man, I tell you what, I don't have that need to compete. I don't miss it.
That's good.
I left everything out on the field. And another thing I tell people, I did it for so long. Like, when I finally retired, I was exhausted from the grind of playing baseball and getting in shape every year and, going out there and trying to make 60 plus appearances. I was so mentally drained and physically drained. And I like to say that most of the people that I know that retired, they weren't ready to retire. So they always had this animosity that they held until they was able to let it go towards the game of baseball. I didn't have that animosity because I made the choice to retire. I gave the uniform back. They didn't take it from me. I had offers. I could have played in 2016. So leaving that way, I think I was content. I was happy with my decision. And my grandfather told my grandfather's pastor would tell me, the best time to retire? And I was like, I don't know, Pastor Johnson. He said, when they don't want you to, because when they want you to, it's too late. So, I don't have that. I watched the game with admiration, with understanding, still having an understanding how hard it was to play the game. I don't care what position you were at. I still have that in me, that how hard it was. So I don't need that that competitive stuff. I don't need that. Now, if you push me, it might can come back out, but just needing it every day, I don't need it.
Okay, Latroy, I'm going to ask, okay, Tom, you go ahead, ask. I got to go take care of something off screen here for a second. So,
all right.
I drank 2 cups of coffee, okay? I have to make a run, okay? I'm old. This is what happens, Latroy, when you get to be my age. Anyways, Tom,
I gotta go. Yeah, I want to go back to that retirement piece because, okay, you played for a long time, but wasn't there just a little, 2015 was a great season for you? Just absolutely, it's not the season you'd expect from someone in their last season. Was there not just a tiny little part of you that thought, hey, let's do this one more time?
No, when I made that decision in 2014, but I made it public in January of 2015. I was on MLB Network doing an interview with Harold Reynolds. And I told him this would be my last year playing professional baseball, good, bad, and different. I don't care how my season went. I was done. And I had already, but you just don't come to that decision just spur of the moment, Tom. Like that was over the course of a couple years, just thinking about it and, understanding like I couldn't I couldn't perform like I wanted to consistently. You know, I was up and down, up and down. And a lot of that was because of, you know, I got to that point where I couldn't recover. You know, I'm accustomed to, you know, Gibby, you know, I would say, he would ask, how you doing? How you feeling today, LaTroy? And instead of telling him I felt like this, you know, 2-3 days in a row, you know, it was a lot of this. I was like, I'm just okay. You know, and if I pitch today, that means I'm gonna be down for 2 days. And I just didn't feel good, you know, after I pitched. And that's a real sign right there. Now, if I wanted to continue and just to take a job and take money and keep another young man from, you know, fulfilling his dream of playing in the major league, sure, I could have did that, but that's not what I wanted. And I went out on my own terms. I never wanted to sit in front of a GM and a manager and let him tell me, you know what, LaTroy, we're going to release you. We're going to go in another direction. We appreciate it. I never want to have that conversation. So that's why I gave the jersey back.
Is there anything you miss about the game?
You know what? No, because I'm still part of the game. And I think that helps. Hi, buddy. How you doing?
You can say hi.
And I think that's why, because I'm still part of the game and I've always been part of the game ever since I retired. So I'm still having an impact on players and the organization. And that right there scratches my itch.
LaTroy, we talked briefly about the Scooters. You've had a lot of teammates. I don't know how well you knew David personally before that, but you know what? Week after week, Tom and I have former Blue Jays on this show, and anyone that was part of that team, the first thing they say is, wow, David Price, like one of the best teammates I've ever had. And he didn't buy everyone's scooters because he wanted to show off. He bought everyone's scooters because he was that kind of guy, right?
Yeah, he was awesome. I didn't know David much before then, but having a chance to play with him and seeing, you know, what made him good. Because when you're watching a guy on TV or watching him across the field, it's like, okay, this guy good. But, you know, getting to really know someone and understand what makes them tick and watching him go about his routine and, you know, yeah, he brought us those scooters, but, you know, I was more excited to what he did for Burley and myself. I think we had that last series in Tampa. Well, yeah, Tampa.
Baltimore.
Well, Baltimore. We went to Tampa probably the series before.
Yeah.
And he had me and Burley, you know, we were out there throwing and they was like, hey guys, we got a meeting, you know, right now. And it's like, nobody told us we had a meeting. So we go in and Price had purchased both of us a painting that Vernon Wells Sr., Vernon Wells' father did.
Yeah.
He's an accomplished painter.
Amazing painter.
And he presented us with our own personal paintings that he paid for. He got us for our retirements because both of us was retiring. Wow. He got it for both of us. And that was pretty cool to have. There's one thing to have fans, you know, recognize, you know, your career, but to have a teammate who took it personal and wanted to do something for his teammates, and that was special. And I hadn't put it on the wall yet because I had so much other stuff on the wall, but you know, when I build my new house, it'll be one of the first things that go on the wall. And he had all my teams on there. So
that's amazing.
I've seen
Vernon's dad's work, and it's incredible. Actually, he's been on the show before talking about his paintings, and they are phenomenal. LaTroy, before we wrap up, we'll just go around one more time. Anybody else between the three of you ladies have a question you want to ask LaTroy? Or are we all good?
We're good.
We're good. LaTroy, thank you so much. You've been open and honest and candid with us. We're all thrilled to see your name on that Hall of Fame ballot. And you know what? Hopefully, some of those that are still there voting maybe will be influenced by what they saw and the reasons why Pedro voted for you. And we can see that influence. I mean, he may be gone, but hopefully the impact that he left on the world will never be forgotten. And some of these other voters can get off their asses and realize how deserving you are. I know all of us here in this room right now would vote for you in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.